And now for the last look. At the heart of the infrastructure fight in Washington is this question: should the U.S. hike taxes on corporations to raise money to fight climate change? Now, Republicans point out that whatever you tax, you get less of. And today's economy needs more corporate activity, not less. It's a fair point. So then the answer, to me at least, is obvious. Let's tax the thing we should all agree we want less of, which is carbon dioxide emissions. The fundamental reason why we are not making much headway with reducing carbon emissions is they're everywhere. We tend to focus on electricity and transportation, but those sectors account for only about half of all U.S. greenhouse gas emissions. When we make cement, that emits carbon. Even if you have solar panels and drive an electric car, the process of making the panels and the car generated carbon. Our food production creates huge amounts of greenhouse gases. We could try to reduce carbon sector by sector, issuing reams of regulations to mandate emission cuts and spending large amounts of money to prop up certain technologies. That is essentially the current approach: clunky, selective, and subject to political swings. The government is essentially adding red tape and picking winners and losers. What if instead we unleash the power of the market to solve the problem? That's what a carbon tax would do. Think of it as putting a price on carbon, making sure all products reflect their true cost to society by charging a fee for carbon pollution. Suddenly, every industry and business would have a powerful incentive to reduce emissions wherever they occurred. And rather than the government telling them how to do it, they'd be free to figure out the best, cheapest way. Maybe it's buying more efficient equipment, or maybe it's installing solar panels, maybe it's electric vehicles, maybe it's hydrogen vehicles. We will see 100 solutions bloom. Now, carbon taxes have often been politically toxic in the US and in other countries. In many cases, ordinary people feel they have to bear the brunt of higher prices. That's where the new concept of carbon dividends comes in. The idea is to take at least some of the revenues raised by the carbon tax and give it back to people, sending out checks every few months. Remember how popular the stimulus checks were? Polls indicate 2/3 of Americans support the basic idea behind carbon dividends. A growing number of conservatives are getting behind this idea. It's mostly former Republican officials, but some Republican lawmakers like Mitt Romney and Lindsey Graham have expressed interest. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce and the American Petroleum Institute now support carbon pricing as well. But if we raise the cost of carbon here, won't that mean China benefits by exporting cheaper, dirtier goods to America? No, because those goods would simply be subjected to the same carbon fee at the border, a green tariff. This could actually help American producers compete with foreign imports because U.S. products are often cleaner. A study commissioned by one advocacy group found that carbon tariffs would increase domestic sales of U.S. steel by up to 9%. Ideally, these tariffs won't actually be necessary because other countries will adopt their own carbon taxes. After all, if the choice is for Chinese companies to pay the tax to the U.S. or pay a domestic carbon tax into Chinese coffers, wouldn't Beijing prefer the latter? Virtually every economist agrees a carbon tax is the single best strategy to begin to solve the climate crisis. Instead, we are pursuing an inefficient, bureaucratic, piecemeal approach. Let's not settle for that. There is a better way. Thanks to all of you for being part of my program this week. I will see you next week.